Of the hundreds of times that I have told my origin story on summits or guest teaching places, you know what? I have never once ever shared it in full here on my own podcast in my own community. So, to celebrate a really big milestone, I'll tell you more about that soon. I want to reintroduce myself to you and share with you the inside scoop of how I went from a struggling musician and web designer to a brand astrologer, complete with a method in my back pocket called the AstroBrand Method. So listen in. Before we dive in, if you want to be notified whenever a new video drops, hit that subscribe button. If you already have, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for supporting this channel, Star Powered with Leslie Tagorda. That's me. Welcome to Star Powered Astrology for Changemakers. I'm Leslie Tagorda, your guide, a Hawaii-born Filipino Jewish astrologer who loves navigating visionaries like you through the spiritual journey of your work so that you can be inspired to lead by your chart and become the luminary leader you were born to be. All right. Hello, everyone. I was thinking about today's episode and what I wanted to share with you and the stories that I wanted to tell, especially as we are still at the very beginning of Jupiter in Gemini and how to find our voice and how to tell the stories that are truly in our hearts. It's so funny that I started to kind of recognize and connecting the dots. While I have told my origin story, if you've been to a master class of mine, or if you've seen me on a summit somewhere, I've told this story over and over again because people have asked. I'm like, well, I don't know. Why does my story is not important? My story is not valuable. Who wants to hear my story? Right. And I'm just like listening to the thoughts that go in my head and going, if I was my own client, I would be like, hello, everybody wants to hear an origin story. Everybody wants to know why. How did you find astrology? What are all the twists and turns? So today, I want to share with you my story of being someone who is always trying to answer who do I need to be instead of who am I? Okay. So, one of the most important reasons that I wanted to come here today and kind of reintroduce myself, my name is Leslie Tagorda, if you don't already know, is that I just celebrated a 25-year anniversary. Now, 25 years, like if you've lived through 25 years, that's half my life at this point. 25 years happens so fast. If I look back to 1999, on May 31st, I remember driving over the Bay Bridge from the East Bay in Oakland to San Francisco. And if you've ever driven over the Bay Bridge heading east to west, you see San Francisco. It's like just totally a crown jewel. It's just like the beautiful financial district and the Quite Tower and the Salesforce building. Well, Salesforce building wasn't there back then, but just like all of the lights and all of the glitter and all of the glam of San Francisco. And I remember just driving over that bridge for the first time with my whole life in front of me, just that feeling of ecstatic excitement. I can still feel that feeling, even though it happened on May 31st, 1999, a whole 25 years ago. And so, what this means is that I have been living my new life in San Francisco, half of my life now here in San Francisco, even though I was born and raised in Hawaii. And I still go back to Hawaii very often. I have officially spent more time here in San Francisco than I have in Hawaii. And every time this May 31st anniversary comes back, I like to remember about that person that I was driving across the Bay Bridge, literally $200 in my bank account. I was driving in my father's car. My biological father lived about 90 minutes north of San Francisco, and I kind of set up shop there until I got myself settled. But I went straight into San Francisco. I had a job already. I transferred from the Waikiki Banana Republic to the downtown San Francisco, the flagship Banana Republic. I was so excited because I knew I was going to meet new people. I knew I had my life ahead of me. Now, in 1999, San Francisco was just like on fire in all of the best ways. It was the place to be because of the technology boom, Web 0.0, Web 1.0, the dot-com era. And I remember that I wanted to go find a job. And, just like when you have these desires and you're in a new place, like I think your energy is electric. And I must have been putting out like all of my manifestation energy, because I remember I went to like this little Japanese restaurant for lunch, and then there was this guy from Hawaii. He's like, "Hey, Leslie, what are you doing here?" It's like, "Oh, I just moved to San Francisco." He's like, "Awesome. I moved here a couple of weeks ago. Hey, you know the website that you really need?" And I was like, "What's the website I really need?" And, this is before like we didn't have like cell phones that had web. I had a little mobile phone that had like maybe a basic texting properties. You'd press the number over and over and over again to get like the letter that you wanted. It's like really, technology was not my forte. He's like, "You need to go on Craigslist." I was like, "Ooh, Craigslist, what's Craigslist?" He's like, "You can find an apartment there, you can find a job there, you can find whatever you need on Craigslist." I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sending me that." So, I went on Craigslist, I found an apartment right away. And I didn't find an apartment because I was looking at posts, because this was in 1999 and people were like flooding San Francisco. Everybody who wanted a job was coming to San Francisco. It was really hard to find an apartment. And so I wrote a letter. I wrote a little post on Craigslist. I said, "This is me. This is my budget. These are the neighborhoods I want to live in. These are the people I want to live with," and blah, 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 blah. And guess what? Not even a day later, I got a message from somebody who had a very inexpensive room. So she didn't want to put a post up. Otherwise she would be like inundated with people. She's like, "I have this room. It's in the neighborhood that you want. It's only $400. $400 in 1999, when like literally rooms at the time were going for $1,500, like just crazy amounts of money." And so I went in. She goes, "Do you want it?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, you're in." I was like, "What?" Now I'm telling you all of this. There is a reason why I'm telling you all of this. It's because when you have this clarity of what you want, the universe is listening. Now we're going to all go up and down in clarity. And at this time in 1999, I was super clear. The other thing that I was super clear on is that I wanted a tech job. Now, I had just graduated with my master's degree in music. I could send emails. I just learned how to add attachments, but that was like the extent of my tech skills. Like I knew how to go on a browser. I knew how to go find Craigslist. That was all fine. And I went to this headhunter because at the time, that's what you did. You went to a headhunter to get a job. Headhunter, she was I guess they're not called headhunters anymore. What are they called? Like human resources or something like that. She was really nice. She took my resume. She's like, this resume isn't gonna do you anything. Buy this book, rewrite your resume, and come back." So I went to the Barnes and Noble. We still had bookstores back in 1999. Picked up the book, How to Write Your Resume. I forget which book it was, and then redid my resume. Went back the next day, and she's like, "What are you doing here so fast?" And I was like, "Well, you said to redo my resume, so here it is." And she's like, "Oh, okay, well, this resume looks really good. Okay, I'll send it out to some job posts." So she kept on sending me to these administrative jobs, these jobs that like this hospital was looking for a receptionist, or this architect was looking for a front desk person. And I would go to interviews, I would get the jobs, because jobs were like, people just needed smart people at the time. Like anybody could get a job, right? And I went back to the headhunter and I was like, "Look, I don't want any of these jobs." She's like, "I'm not going to send you anywhere because you keep on saying no to these jobs that I'm getting you." I was like, "Did you not hear me? I want a tech job. I want a job with a tech company that is going to teach me all these new things." So final interview she sends me on, she's like, this is it, Leslie. Like, I'm not going to send you on any more interviews, because she, her time was money, and I was wasting her time by not saying yes to these jobs. And it was finally at a tech company. This tech company was the first company that was delivering email tech support. So you would email support at da 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 da, and we'd get your emails, and then we would have to answer your tech support. And the email, the client that I was working for was Palm Pilots. We were answering tech support for Palm Pilots if they had problems with their little digital calendar or whatever. They would email us and we would respond. This one company was on this hiring frenzy, and the hiring manager saw that my music school, saw my music school, a super elite competitive music school, and said, let's bring her in for an interview, because if she can graduate from that school, she'll be able to learn anything. And as soon as I got that offer in, I was there. This time was just so incredible back in 1999. Like, just money was flowing. I could take any technical class that I wanted, because remember, I only knew how to send an email with attachments. But by the time I was there for not even 6 months, they had sent me to India to do training. I was creating HTML static web pages. I was answering customer support emails. I knew what an email server was. I knew all, how to build a web page, how to train. I was learning instructional design, because I was having to train our cohorts in India. All of these things in a very short period of time, in less than 6 months, all because I knew what I wanted and I was very, very clear. Now, while I don't do tech support anymore, we still, design web pages for our clients, we are not doing things in static HTML. While I am no longer working for corporate America, I needed all of those skills to be the astrologer that I am today. I learned instructional design and what it means to create training and to create courses that you could follow up and get your results and teach in a really amazing way, to teach online before anybody else was trailblazing how we were teaching online. I needed all of those skills. I didn't yet know that I was going to be an astrologer. Yes, I still loved astrology, but that was deep in my pocket, deep in the closet. I wasn't really talking about astrology back then in 1999. Now, as fast forward to 2004, I was I wanted to go back into music, because remember, I had started I had two music degrees, a master's degree in music, and I really miss playing the clarinet again. I was playing in community bands, and I started taking lessons with the principal clarinetist in the symphony and the opera, because I wanted to get back into the professional field. Now, I wanted to get back into the professional field. However, I did not want to be a poor musician. And I remember at the time, some of the musicians that I knew who were professionals, they were really struggling with their finances. They were, teaching at schools, or they had a private studio that they were teaching. And when I lived in Hawaii before 1999, I had a giant private studio where I was teaching group clarinet classes and one-on-one private lessons. And I loved the teaching of it, but I hated, teaching just took so much energy out of me, and I hated managing everybody's schedule. I just didn't want to go back there. But I did want to be a musician, and I wanted to call my own shots. So then I decided that I was going to start a web design business. I was going to have my own business that was flexible, that could manage my lifestyle, that I could make my own schedule, because I wanted to be a musician. And so I took a business planning class. I met so many wonderful people from this business planning class. This is still 2003, 2004. We had MySpace, but there was no Facebook or anything yet. We didn't even have our iPhones just yet. And I just remember that as soon as I came out of that business planning class and I said that I wanted to be a web designer, because of that network, I had already come out and started my business with clients. It was so amazing. I felt like so blessed to have clients, to have been put into these communities that were, of other like-minded people, like some people I'm still friends with to this day. And so I went into music. So I had my music career, I had my web design career. And for about 10, 12 years, things were going pretty smoothly. There were no hills, there was like nothing tragic that happened, nothing exciting, no like big breaks, no like spectacular failures, just kind of trudging along for about 10 or 12 years. And this is where things get kind of boring, okay? Because I had lost my vision of what I wanted. I was, working with clients. I was doing really well in music and kind of, but still splitting my time between music and my business. Now, before, if you've heard me on a podcast talking about web design before, when you're creating a website, whether it's a one-page sales page or if it's a full-blown blog that has all of this content, a website takes all of these different disciplines to be able to put together. And these are all branding disciplines because you need to know who your audience is. You need to be able to know what you're doing so well. You need to know like design things. You need to know the colors that resonate with you and the symbols and the style of what you want it to visually look like. And you need to know copywriting and storytelling to be able to promote the value and share what you have. And so over those 12 years, while I wasn't reaching like tons of success, I was paying the bills, we were putting up beautiful websites, but the same thing kept on happening. Myself, as well as my clients, were getting stuck. Because even though we knew all the rules of like how to put together a story, how to put together a unique value proposition, how to put together all of the colors and things, we ultimately were guessing. Oh, color psychology. Well, I like blue. My other competitors have red, so maybe I'll try blue. Or we would copy. We were like, oh, look at how successful they are. Let's try that. And then just like try to pretend to be somebody else. Now, all of this comparisonitis, all of this comparing, all of this copying, all this pretending is a shoe-in to stay stuck. Now, if earlier, I don't know if this actually made the cut, but I think I've shared some of my life story in terms of like growing up multiracial, growing up in Hawaii, in a place where I had all of these different families. I had my mom's family that was, European Jewish. I had my biological dad's family that was Filipino. And I had my stepdad who raised me, his family that was Okinawan. And from a really, really young age, as early as I can remember, I was always trying to answer the question, who do I need to be to fit in? Who do I think they want me to be? I never was asking myself, who am I? So even though I had those like that clarity of like what I wanted to do and like when I went to San Francisco, just like this whole fresh slate of who I wanted to be, I think that's why it was so exciting because that was the first time I was actually asking my own questions of who am I and who do I want to be? Okay. 25 years old, asking myself, who am I and who do I want to be? Where before that, I was always asking, who do I need to be? Because I was code switching, right? When I was with my white family, I recognized even from a young age, like a Thanksgiving dinners at like my grandma's house in Pearl City. I was the only person of color there. Everybody else was white, and I recognized that. I recognized that my maternal grandfather didn't really want to speak to me until like I didn't meet him until I was 5 years old. I recognize this. I recognize that when I went to my Filipino family, even though they loved me and there was there's a lot of colorism and I was lighter skinned, so the colorism worked in my favor. However, I was still othered. I would even though it was said in a very loving way, my little sensitive heart still felt like I was separate. They would call me the haole, and in like Hawaii vernacular, the haole means the white person, right? And like obviously I'm not white, but when I would go to like my Filipino gatherings, even though I was definitely loved, there was still like othering. And so I was like, well, how do I need to be more Filipino? And because when I was much younger, I suffered from colonial mentality, and I was really not proud to be Filipino, especially when I was, coming from like my white family's homes or maybe my stepdad's homes. There was just like this caste system. And I was always trying to figure out, how did I fit in and how do I belong? And then my Okinawan family, my stepdad's family that adopted me, also very loving. But I did recognize from a very young age, like, I don't look like my cousins. I don't have like the same hair. My hair was like super, super curly. My eyes were so much bigger. My coloring was different. I had all these freckles. My mom was like just like all of these things. Even though for the most part I was very, very loved, I just never felt like I could fit in. I went so far as like I studied Japanese from the time I was kindergarten because I wanted to fit in with my Okinawan family. And so, I go back to these earliest memories because it's during these earliest times that these patterns and grooves are imprinted in our behavior, in our psychology, in our mindset. Um, it's really funny because, coming back, if we fast forward to those 10 years of my business where we're just kind of chugging along and not really making that much impact, I settled back into that old pattern of, who do you need me to be? Right. All my clients are like, okay, well, let's create a website, and who do you want me to be? Well, what am I going to say yes to? Because that person is going to pay for this one thing. And that part just kind of really sucked me like my energy dry. But in that time, while I was doing my music, while I was doing my web design, I also renewed my love for astrology. Now, I knew since the age of 6 or earlier that I wanted to study the stars. I knew I would read everything that I could about the moon and the sun and the different planets and the solar system. And in high school, I took physics, and I was gonna like major in astronomy. I actually double majored for like 2 semesters in astronomy and music up in Rochester, where I went to undergrad. I only knew that you could be an astronomer. I had no idea that you could be an astrologer. I had no idea when I was 6 years old that, yes, I wanted to study the stars, but I didn't want to study the stars necessarily in a purely scientific way. I also wanted to study it in a symbolic and a meaning and a story type of way. So I promise I'm putting all these pieces because all these pieces belong. And now we're starting to connect the dots. So my business, again, my web design business, I was paying the bills, but I wasn't making any big impact. My clients and I were just, kind of stuck in terms, because we were guessing and we were comparing, and we were never asking our question, who am I? What are my strengths? What am I designed to do? What am I designed to solve? And so this big question, who am I, just like remained there for like 10 years as I just kept myself busy paying the bills, finishing projects where, my clients and I were still pretty much hiding and comparing and things like that. It wasn't necessarily a fun time, and I remained stuck so long. And, sometimes we come into situations like, well, like a midlife crisis or an identity crisis or an accident or a divorce, all of these things that are like bring up so much conflict. I remember at the time, like I just had a baby. I had a baby when I was 41 years old. My stepdad who'd raised me had died, leaving me as like the sole provider and caretaker for my mom, who had chronic health issues and she was disabled. There was like all of this turmoil happening in around 2014 to 2018. And I thought I was just losing it. I felt like my skin was going to crawl off, like peel off. I thought I was just exploding from my sense of self. I had no idea at the time I was actually going through one of the most important and massive midlife transits called the Uranus opposition, where Uranus, transiting Uranus, where it is in the sky, sits opposite of Uranus, where it was when you were born. And it's a peak of midlife. It's not a crisis, unless you know. If you don't know, it's not a crisis. It's absolutely an awakening. And at that time of my awakening, I finally remembered to look at my natal chart, and I finally asked my question, who am I? Because our natal chart, and I was reminded from this class that I took earlier today about progressions, but that's another topic, that we are both the acorn as well as the oak tree, that our natal charts is the seed, the full expression of who we are becoming. And who we are becoming is already in that seed. Now, when I looked at my natal chart back in 2018, I loved astrology. I was already kind of like coming out of the woo closet. I wouldn't even say I was coming out of the woo closet. I was totally in the woo closet, but I was already experimenting. I was creating these new moon rituals that I called bliss kits, and I was meeting all of these random people, not random, like amazingly random people, these people by chance, by serendipity, who were also spiritual entrepreneurs. And this was like a whole new world to me. I was like, what? You can be a spiritual entrepreneur? You can be an astrologer? And so I was, in 2014 and 2015, I was making these new moon ritual kits that had everything that you need to do to put together a new moon intention, because I had been really working with new moon intentions by then to, get a new house, to do vision boards, to meet my partner, to get married, to do all of these different things in my life. And then starting to do this with my business. So at the time of my Uranus opposition in 2018, I was like, who am I? I want to burn my whole business down because it was so frustrating because I was not making any impact. And at this time, I opened up my natal chart, and having learned everything that I had to know about branding for over the last 15 years of my life, from brand archetypes to client avatars to like what you need for your copywriting and your communications, what you need for like designing, like the whole shebang, vision, voice, and style, anything about a brand, I knew the technical and like the rules to follow by to create a personal brand, to create a business brand. But then all these archetypes, we're just guessing, right? So when I finally found my natal chart, I was like, oh my gosh, look, here's my sun sign. Here's what I'm supposed to do that is like so brilliant, that needs to shine so brightly. Oh, look, here's my rising sign, how I'm supposed to initiate and guide. Oh, look, my moon is telling me what I need so that I feel emotionally secure. Oh, look, here's all of like your communications, your sales, all of it. All of it was in my natal chart. And my mind, like, literally was blown. And so, just like in 1999, where in 6 months I had made this like rapid quantum leap in my skills and like my ability and like just rooting myself in San Francisco, in 6 months, I made another quantum leap. All of everything that I needed started coming towards me. I found a business coach that helped me really identify my entire framework and my brand. And I found an astrology mentor, a business astrology mentor, who validated what I had found in my natal chart, and starting to connect the dots, not just from business, but into a brand. How do we make an impact? How do we lead? How do we inspire change? How do we make our mark? How do we take up space and be present in the hearts and the minds of our soul customers? That's truly what a brand is, to make your mark with your presence that way. And so all of this happened, I kid you not, in 6 months. By the end of 6 months in July of 2018, I had beta tested a cohort of, I think there was 12 people in that first cohort of the 12 weeks. No, it was 12 weeks. And I think there was 8 people in that first cohort where I was building out my curriculum, building out my method. My business coach was really pushing me out of my comfort zone to do risky things and to come out of the spiritual closet and to like be visible on social media, to start using email marketing, to do all of these things. Everything happened in this short, quick 6 months because I was ready. I had seen it. And it's so interesting how that vision, voice, and style that I had been using for 12 years in my business is still the method. Although vision, I change it with position often: position, voice, and style, vision, voice, and style. And when I saw that AstroBrand or my natal chart, and I saw all of the connections and the dots to what a brand is, this is how the AstroBrand method was created. And the AstroBrand method is so unlike any other branding tools out there because there's no guessing. There's no comparison. There's no copying. The AstroBrand method shows you who you are, who you are meant to become, the strengths that you're supposed to grow into, the past patterns that you're supposed to move out of, but fall back on when you need to, the parts that you need to feel secure in your business so you can take those big risks. Because running a business, whether you are a self-employed or an entrepreneur or you're an executive, takes risks, right? It's scary to be able to show up and be visible. And so when we finally came here, to fast forward to 2024, 6 years after this 2018 midlife awakening, it took me then the 6 years to galvanize, to create the coursework, to create the curriculum, and now to be at a place where it has been validated, it's been proved. I can see the results in my clients, that I finally have a certification so that I can teach others how to use this powerful tool of self-discovery, of leadership and professional development, without copying, without pretending, without guessing, and so that we can see that our work here is part of our spiritual journey, that all of the twists, all of the turns, all of the dead ends, all of the detours, you are picking up skills and experiences that you need right here and right now. And so the AstroBrand method was presented to me at a time where I was about to burn the whole thing down. Isn't it beautiful how this happens? And so if you're someone like me who loves astrology and loves guiding others so that they can make their mark, whether you're a designer, whether you're a copywriter, whether you're a storyteller or a coach or an advisor, maybe the AstroBrand method is for you, so that you can have this secret tool, this secret weapon in your back pocket for good, for making change, so that we can all become the leaders that we are born to be, so that we can all change the faces of leadership, so that we can see our value and we can stop underestimating ourselves and start changing the world. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed this kind of long extended version of how I went from a struggling web designer to a thriving astrologer, and how the AstroBrand method was presented to me. And maybe this is something for you too, because I know that the AstroBrand method doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of us, and that it wants to be in the world as a tool so that we can make change for good through our leadership and change making work. All right, my friend, I'm going to be following up with a couple of more episodes in this vein to talk to you more about the parts of the AstroBrand method. And if this is sparking something in you that you want to teach and share also with your clients, head on over to starpower.com/certification. And you can learn more about an upcoming cohort or how you can work with the certification for you and your clients. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. As a human design projector, my energy shines more brightly because of people like you who share my work. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help build a movement of innovative astrology and leadership and spark the intuitive revolution, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share this podcast with your change-making besties. We will all shine brighter together as we create the future we want to see.